Well, welcome everyone. And for those of you who joined us here live, thanks for taking some time out of your afternoon or evening, whatever it is by your neck of the woods here. Thanks for joining us. And for those of you who are going to watch this later down the road on YouTube or on LinkedIn, thanks for spending time with us here as well too. Super excited. We are doing something that we have not done before in the, I guess, the 8 months that the AI and local government network has been around here, and that is we are changing our typical time that we normally have for webinars. And the reason for it is actually really exciting. We have some really cool guests from Australia who are joining us. Thankful that they were able to arrange their schedules, uh, have a little bit less sleep on their end of things, they could join us here and talk about permits and the practical uses of AI in permitting. So super excited to have Archistar and their team with us today and discuss that. Before we do this, want to mention too as well, so this entire webinar today is sponsored by Archistar. They are our gold sponsor, so thank you to them for bringing this to life and allowing us to get together and have this discussion, and hopefully more discussions with you and your city and your organization down the road, as well as our silver sponsor, ClerkMinutes. So to kick things off, I'm actually have Megan join us here. Megan, feel free to join to share your screen here. I'm going to pin you for everybody that we can see you and talk about some of the new updates in ClerkMinutes.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to get my screen shared. So give me 1 second. Good evening to everyone in the US and good morning to those in Australia. I think it's morning there anyways. Thank you for joining today, and thank you, Micah, for letting us have some time to do an updated demo and talk about some of our new features with ClerkMinutes. If you've been joining the calls since the beginning, we actually did a demo in January and talked about ClerkMinutes a little bit. Some things have changed. We've had some updates. So I thought I would go through and do another short demo just to give you the basics of what it is if you weren't watching that early on, and some of our updates for those of you who have already seen it. So again, my name's Megan. I am our ClerkMinutes specialist over here, and so I'm gonna get started. So for those of you who handle minutes, you know that they're not very fun. Traditionally, it's something that takes hours to do. It's very tedious. You have to manually go through and transcribe, format, proofread, and that can drain you. That can take a lot of time out of your day. So with ClerkMinutes, we take this hours-long process down to about 15 minutes. So with ClerkMinutes, you're going to be able to spend more time doing things like improving your community with the time saved from administrative tasks. You can invest more in community projects. You can enhance your local services and even organize events that bring residents together. And the next thing that you can do with ClerkMinutes is build better relationships. You're going to have a more efficient minute-taking process, and you're going to be able to foster better communication and transparency within your community. The last thing that you can do is professional development. So with that, that means things like attending more training sessions, participating in professional networks, and taking on projects that enhance your skills and career trajectory. It could even be things like joining calls like this to learn about the newest AI tech and how it can help you in your job. ClerkMinutes not only optimizes your workflow, but it also empowers you to make a lasting impact on your community, relationships, and professional life. So how does it work? It's very simple and it only has 3 steps. The first step is building the agenda, or if you already have an agenda that you always make anyways, you can just upload one. I know places like North Carolina, for example, they're not required to have an agenda at all. So if you're one of the states that there's no requirement, maybe you don't build a full agenda already, you can just kind of do it in our system. The next step is to upload a recording of your meeting. If you're not already recording your meeting, it can be as simple as using a handheld recorder. And we also allow Zoom and YouTube links. And then the last step is to process the minutes. This is kind of just proofreading, making any of those final changes you need to make before the minutes are finished, and you can upload them to your website. So all it takes is 3 of these steps, and then your minutes are finished. Really quick, I'm going to dive just a tad bit deeper into each step. for building the agenda, you have the option, like I said, to upload and it'll kind of build it out for you using AI, or you can create an agenda in our system. This is as easy as just adding the agenda items in one by one and then attaching any documents if you want to have those in there. Next up, we just need to upload the recording. And as I mentioned, you can either upload a recording or video. It can be in MP3, MP4 format. We also accept the movie format. And then you can also, if you already record your meeting, maybe you stream it on Zoom and you have a public link, you can just drop that link in there and it'll actually pull the video file for you. Or like how Micah's streaming this on YouTube, you can also pull YouTube links as well and just copy and paste that URL in. And our system will take that and transcribe it so it can create minutes. So now we've uploaded our recording, and the last thing we need to do is process the minutes. So to process the minutes, we do have 3 sub-steps, but again, they're really quick. We need to assign speakers, set length and tone, and then proofread our minutes, and then we're done. So to assign speakers, all you do is it's going to generate that transcript from your video. And for each person that just talked during the meeting, or you could just do it for the important people, you just go through, select or add in their names. And you only have to do it once for each person. Our system can tell the difference between different people's voices. So if I assigned myself as a speaker, every single time I was talking, it would update it with my name. And this just helps, like I said, with things like if someone makes a motion, it will include their name in with the motion on our final minutes. And so once you've assigned the speakers, added your speakers in, the next thing you need to do is set length and tone. And this is just kind of customizing your minutes so they work for you. You can choose the length. We have short, medium, and long lengths. And then for the tone, it has a few different options, and you might want to play around with it just to see what works best for you. But we have like professional, official meeting format. We have a more casual tone of voice. Sometimes they add and take them away, so I don't know exactly what's on there. There used to be one that made it sound that you could make your minutes sound like a Southerner if you wanted them to sound like how I'm talking right now. All right, and once you've selected the tone, the last step is just to click generate draft minutes. And from there, the last step is to proofread your minutes. You can actually watch it type your minutes out as it's processing, and it's kind of fun. And then once it's finished, you can go through and we have a built-in text editor, so you can make any required changes. If you want to create bullet points, add in links, anything like that, you can do all of that within ClerkMinutes. We do have some new things you can do. So I think up to here is probably similar to how it was in January. But we added a big update this past month called AI Actions. And what this does is it allows you to highlight sections or even the full minutes. And you can choose to make your minutes longer, make them shorter. You can have it rewrite it in a different style if you didn't like the original style that you chose. They're not working for you. And then we also kind of have a DIY change, and it's describe your change. And with this, you can tell it to do pretty much anything and it'll do it for you. So one thing you could do is have it translate your minutes for you and download a version in Spanish or German or whatever language you want them in. There's also option, like I said, you can pretty much do anything. Here, I told it to make the section longer and put it in paragraph form. So it's going to do that, and it's going to give you a little draft to look over, and you can either accept or discard the changes made. And you can always just retry if you didn't like what it generated. And so that's our cool big update. I think it'll help a lot of problems that people were having where certain sections weren't detailed enough and things like that. Or maybe if you just want your minutes to be different, you can ask it to build it differently. And then if you just didn't like what it generated, we now have a regenerate minutes button at the bottom, and you could just have it generate the whole thing again. So now we've finished the whole process, and your minutes are finished. With ClerkMinutes, you're going to reduce the time spent on minutes from hours to actual minutes. It's going to improve your accuracy. It's going to also allow you to reclaim time. Speaking of which, for everyone who's actually on this call, or if you're watching it back, We would like to give you the gift of reclaimed time and free up your space, your mental space and energy by giving you a 30-day free trial of ClerkMinutes. To claim that, everyone who's, like I said, who's watching this back or on the call now, you can either scan this and it'll take you to a registration page where you can register for the 30-day free trial. You can go to clerkminutes.com/try if you just want to try them out and before you commit to a trial, which our trials are very easy to start. You don't have to put in credit card information. There's no obligation. So you can just honestly just sign up and play around with it if you want to and see how it works for you. Um, if you don't want to do any of those steps, you could just drop your email in chat and I'll make sure I get the information to you to start the trial. And I'm going to throw it back over to Micah, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in chat and I'll keep an eye on it and answer them for you.
Thank you, Megan. This is super, super cool. And I was talking to some folks at the Arizona City Managers Association and League of Arizona Cities and Towns, I think back in January, showing this thing, and they were all over it. They thought it was the coolest thing. So this is just a really, really great tool if you're doing any kind of minutes things. And in fact, I'm gonna have to go back up there and look at the trial to see if I can create minutes for this webinar here. Be cool.
Yeah,
It'll save me some time, and I'll get some time back too. So by all means, please, if you have any questions on anything, please reach out to Megan,
and
Nalay,
I
and
will drop my
also
email in chat.
perfect. Wonderful. If you have any questions for Megan, feel free to reach out to her. I did have one question from a colleague of mine. He wanted to know whether or not it could change his northern Minnesota accent through this, if it could translate it out of that into to
Yeah,
more
just
understand.
translate it over to Southern.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So
Yeah,
thank you
definitely.
so. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us here, Megan. Super interesting. Like I said, we'll have this out to everybody else as well too, that we can see it. Super cool tool and really a game changer. So much how much time we're spending on drafting minutes. Think of all our commissions, our city council meetings, all the things that we do. Even just meetings within our own teams too can be helpful to be able to put that into it, to have takeaways, and you can go forward and have something actionable to do with that too. So great, great insights, Megan. Thank you for that.
Thank you as well, Micah.
So I'm going to have David Hunt here join us here, if you don't mind unmuting here, David, and let's learn more about Archistar. I'm super, super excited to have David here. He is going to be a fun conversation to learn more about Archistar. This is going to be a very informal and what was the word you used before, David? That wasn't.
Yeah, I'm going to do it like a live demonstration of the technology, just so everyone can just see and understand what it's all about.
Perfect. So with that being said, if anyone has any questions for David as we go along, please feel free to drop them in the chat right here. And I'll be monitoring the chat in the background and let David talk and show us more about Archistar and some of the practical uses of AI in our world, especially in permitting and permit assessments. So David, I'm going to turn things over to you. Feel free to share your screen if you want to here.
Hopefully you all can see my screen. Is that right?
Not quite yet.
No.
Let's try it again here.
We'll try again.
Looks like we're good now. Yep.
How's that?
Perfect. Wonderful. Perfect.
Oh, well, you'll have to excuse me. It must be the jet lag. So yesterday I flew in from Sydney to Dallas. So I'm here for the next few days in Fort Worth for the Building Officials of Texas conference. So, but it's great to be over here. Really excited to tell you guys, about the work that we're doing. And today we're going to talk about the practical uses of AI in the building permit assessment process. Just to get a little bit more bandwidth, I'll just turn my screen off. So basically, we've developed technology that enables cities to basically halve planning assessment times using our world first AI. And we've been doing a lot of work around the world. In particular, in the last couple of years, I think I've spent half my life in North America, in the US and Canada. But we're based in Sydney, Australia, as you can probably tell from my accent. And it's quite incredible to produce world first technology that's helping to solve a great problem, to speed up permitting and increase housing supply. Now, the first part of what we do is our explore and design part. And I'm going to show you this in more detail, but I just want to show you a few slides before I go on to the actual demo. And the second part is the permit approval part. I'll start with the explore and design part because this is the foundation of the platform, and you can see that on the left. And what it does is we educate the applicant so they first of all know, what are the bylaws that apply, what's permitted, what's not permitted, and it sets out applications early on, even before the land is purchased. That's important because we hear horror stories, of people who have bought land and they want to develop, X, Y, or Z, but they can't because it's not permitted. And then they've made a very costly decision. And this not only applies to buildings, but it applies to businesses and leases. And we've heard that people sign up for 5-year leases and for a particular type of business, and then realize afterwards that it's not even permitted to perform that type of business. So the more we can educate people up front through data, then all this is at the point of submitting a permit, then we're really focused on that sort of pre-permit side of things. Some of the things that we're hearing globally when we're speaking to cities is, and this is really good, it's basically the challenges of permitting. So, this inconsistency in submission completeness and quality. So for instance, a permit application and a design submission gets submitted and it's taking a while to get approved, and straight away it's the city that's getting the blame for taking all the time to assess it, when the real systemic problem often is the quality of the submission in the first place and the inconsistency in the submission. And I'm sure you can all identify with that. We're also, hearing that cities have staff shortages in permitting, permit checking, and there's a high turnover. So, this sort of technology helps with that. And, permit approvals can take many months, even a year in some cities. Applicants, they're submitting like 3+ times. That amount of rework is occurring to resolve non-compliance issues. And, there is a bit of a stigma that you often hear, and that is that permitting can be associated with poor customer satisfaction because, everyone wants what they want and they want it now. And then the other big area is, the delays in permit approvals. They add a lot of cost to the applicants and to the city. Like I've read studies where, we're talking and got feedback from cities, $5,000 to $10,000 a month that it's costing an applicant with a single family permit. And, for a duplex, townhomes or something like that can be tens of thousands a month, and multifamily can be hundreds of thousands a month. So, these are really serious challenges, and it's great to have developed technology that really helps cities overcome a lot of these problems. So basically, how does it work? And how our e-check works, so I'm going to again show this to you live in a second. It's basically a 2-step process. And the first step is that, we create a digitized version of the planning codes or bylaw for plan review assessment. And the second step is the applicant submits their design as is for a pre-check assessment. So before the applicant actually submits their design application, basically they're doing a pre-check report to check for compliance. So they don't need to change anything. They need to modify their workflow. Whatever they're going to submit to the city, they basically submit through Archistar for pre-assessment. And our e-check technology will basically read the designs from PDF drawings. And an applicant can submit by CAD or BIM, and we accept all formats. But it is a PDF. We read the drawings, and the design will assess the design against the digitized code, and then that results in a standardized compliance report. And this gets provided with every application, and it's really cool how it works. And if you think about it, when the applicant first submits, there may be a lot of what we would call red crosses, which I'll show you in a moment, but because, and they're in non-compliant areas, well, then the applicant will straight away, know those areas and will want to fix those areas before they submit. So they'll know where the non-compliance is. So now I'm just going to move over and I'm going to actually take you onto the platform. And just before I do that, I should probably give you a little bit more context about Archistar. And that is, our founder is a guy by the name of Dr. Ben Curry. And Ben is an architect by background, and he's got a PhD in 3D generative design. Now, what does that mean? It's basically generative AI using AI to bring buildings up out of the ground digitally using algorithms and geometry. So it's quite amazing. And we've been focusing on this technology, like streamlining processes and how you can use generative design to really fast track and really understand what you can do on your land. And we've been on a journey, and like we started to evolve as we started to work with the industry, and we went from what we call generative design or speculative design to being able to assess real designs. And when we started with 3D generative design, it was quite amazing, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. And this very quickly turned into digitizing planning and zoning bylaws to drive that generative design. And in Australia, and you can see our platform, I don't think any property platform's been built like this in the world. We spent something like 100,000 hours loading 900 million lines of planning code for the whole country. And those planning rules then powered our parametric design generators, which are design strategies. And so it's basically not just about what we design, but it's about the rules and regulations that underpin that. And then we started speaking with the government, in Australia and overseas about one of the biggest issues, which is the permit workflow process. And if we could use digitized zoning rules to do speculative design to test out what is possible, then could we apply that same technology to start assessing, pre-assessing incoming submissions and incoming permits? And we've evolved over time, and now we're the first company in the world that can accept submissions and check actual designs against zoning bylaw, and now even building code, which is really exciting. And I'll tell you more about that shortly. So if you just start to look here, so this is basically our property platform. And in Australia, we produce this as a SaaS model, and we sell it to the industry where many, like any user, anyone within a city, developers, agents, property professionals can have access to it to understand development potential and to do their property research. And we have over 30,000 users. We've converted it now to be our eCheck platform in North America, and it becomes a white label platform for cities to use. And it also uses our eCheck submission portal. So what we do is, it's basically built in such a way that it's very user-friendly. This is the 4th iteration, so it's really been built so it's extremely easy to use and very customer-centric. So I can click onto any property, and what you'll see here is I can start to get a summary. So basically, what the actual zoning is. I can link back to property portal data, lot size, street frontage, but then we go into this area of land use. So if I go here into land use, like this is the permitted use. And like people are forever making phone calls and putting pressure on cities, asking them for this information. What can I do with my land? Is this permitted? Is this not permitted? Well, here it's very quickly identified. We can even do the same with like the lease uses and all the rest of it. So, and then once we do that, we go into the deeper planning rules, and this gets really, really cool. So, we digitize planning rules. So you can go into any particular site and start to see, you know, what the maximum building height is, what's the front setback, what's the maximum site coverage. This is like for each of the particular permitted uses. And this is so it's one thing to be zoned and for it to be permitted to do a particular type of use, but there are other requirements that need to be met. And it's very easy to get that information here. So for instance, if you want to build a duplex in this zoning, you have to have 400 square meters. If you don't have that, of course, in the US, we're dealing in feet, but and then, you know, if that size block was under 400 square meters, well, then you wouldn't be able to do that. So it's really cool to be able to show that. And then what we also do is we ingest whatever layers the city wants us to. So things like zoning. So here's your zoning layers. You know, you've got things like 3D buildings. So here's the existing footprint, and I could go and put up, you know, the maximum, and you start to see, is anything protruding or is it all correct? Even like things like 1 meter contours. So we basically can ingest any data, all right, by API. And that's what we're doing with the cities. Like, and then you've got all your risk layers, things like, you know, flood, and you can see that coming in and off. Here in this part of the world, we have some bushfire, but even things like heritage properties. So it's like any constituent within the city can basically go and see this and understand it really easily. And again, this is all about customer experience. Even a few crazy layers here, koala biodiversity and fire ant, which is not so relevant over here, but it's relevant back home. And, you know, there's even other cool layers that I can start to talk about, like a really good one that we recently added is neighborlytics. And with neighborlytics, so these are, you can basically start to see hotspots based on mobile coverage, which is really, you know, using data very efficiently. But then, you know, we go further and, you know, we as a next level, which cities can do on our platform, you know, they can start adding like things like sales data, what's on the market from property portals and construction information and all sorts of data layers. Then we go into, I wanted to show you some generative design, and this is a speculative design. So, and this is what Archistar is really famous for, and what our CEO has created with our generative team. And like, if I was to go here onto a particular block of land, so you can see here, it's 783 square meters. I can jump in here, and this is all the different parametric design generators, subdivisions, duplexes, townhomes, mixed use. But let's just say we look at duplexes by code. So these are literally approved designs. So it's looking at this particular site, and it will now generate compliant duplex designs, which is extremely cool. So that just will take a second, and you can start to see here. So this is literally a compliant design. And if I go here, more info, you can see basically there's all the literal information about lot area, lot width, floor space ratio, and so on. You can even go and do a reverse feasibility as to what you'd pay for the land. This is how much they'd sell for. This is the construction costs, and if there was agents' fees to sell and professional fees and contingency and all the rest of it, and just say you wanted to make a 20% profit if you were the developer or whatever, well, this is how much I could pay for the land. So all that type of functionality sort of built in here. But here's another design as well. You can see some trees here. This one's a detached. But then I can move into much more complex. I think I've got one here that I wanted to show you. So if I show you what we would call a condominium type development, just grab something here that would be of interest. So here's and on this particular site, and bear in mind, we easily merge properties together using the technology, and anyone can do it. They just add properties on. But here, you start to see the power of generating much larger developments. So like here's some, and there's many design strategies here. And you can start to look at, you can see lift wells and lift shafts and stairwells, and start to look at many different strategies as we go forward. And then the analytics attached to them. So things like sunlight analysis. So here's these ones here, 6 hours plus sunlight. They're going to be worth more money. Things like ground shadows. So you can see I've switched on the ground shadows, but when you start to turn on the existing buildings as well, and then turn on the ground shadows, it becomes quite interesting as to the impact that it has. So maybe not so good for some of these buildings next to it based on the ground shadowing. And that would have some sort of impact. So this is sort of showing you generative design, and bear in mind the planning rules are powering this behind it. Your setbacks, your height, your maximum heights, floor space ratios, and all that particular data. But it's amazing to be able to visualize all that, and so for everyone being assessed, it's telling you exactly how many hours of sunlight I showed you, and all this other analytics. So really super powerful technology. But what we're really doing here is it's all about educating the applicant and working through that, so you actually know what you can and can't do on your property. What's good about this is that you're educating even before the application, anyone's even thinking of an application, very early in the design part of it. Even before someone even acquires a property, they're starting to look at what's possible and what's not. So I could spend a lot of time on generative design, but I just wanted to give you a glimpse at it because, and we're not selling this to cities at the moment. It's something that could be an add-on module for, to provide to developers and what have you. But the important thing is here, this is speculative design, and it was through this technology, right, that we were able to develop our e-check technology. And where we started with e-check was with the Victorian government in Australia, basically said, if you can do what you're doing with generative AI for speculative design, are you able to do the same thing on real designs? So we went and solved the hardest problem first, which was 3D BIM. And we built e-check for 3D BIM. So basically digitize the planning rules of the zoning bylaw, upload a 3D plan, and we built technology that was able to then read that particular uploaded design and produce a compliance report. Now, to put into perspective, if you understand permit checking, you know that probably at least 60% of it is all mathematical, it's all geometry, it's all measurement. It's not subjective, it's objective. So anything that is objective, we have built the technology to automatically check it. So for instance, if I look here, you can see the rules and you can see the answer. This is what I mean by tick cross. So, you know, front wall is set back no less than 25% of the area of the front facade of the building. It's passed, and that's the reason why. And this is basically all the rules, all that detail, all that checking is being done automatically. You know, entrance to the dwelling, things like detailed articulation. And I could read through each of them, but you start to see what I'm saying here. You know, building height, checking it all automatically. And here, for instance, you've got one here, which is non-compliant. And you can see that line there. And this is in relation to the eaves, fascia, and gutters. Now, the beautiful thing about this technology is this is not after the event. This is before the event, right? So the applicant is actually doing a pre-check report before they submit, not after they submit. So therefore, they would do their pre-check report, they'll get the results, and then they'll fix it up before they submit. Otherwise, if they submit, they want to have a good reason as to why a variance should be allowed. But what applicants want to know is they want to know the answers to the exam before the test. That's a good way to put it. And that's what eCheck's about. It's basically telling the applicant what compliance is, and they can easily design to compliance using this technology. Now, no one has to do what I was just doing. They basically just download a report. Sorry about that. I'm just putting that back on. But basically, when they download a report, and I might have one loaded in here. It will basically show them everything that we just did then, but in one large report. It's just taking us back here for a second. So here's the report, and because there's metadata here, you get an instant report. So basically, and this is quite a big report, but everything that I was just showing, it's showing you the crosses and the ticks, and it's all built and aligned the same way that the zoning bylaw is written, and then you know the exact wording as to what the rule is, why it's approved, why it's not approved. So we go through that process. Now, this is 3D BIM. The industry's not at 3D BIM. So we solved the hardest problem first. Then we worked backwards and did CAD. And then we solved the problem where most of the applications are occurring, which is with PDF, because people are submitting in PDF. So, you know, this gets really exciting. And basically, you know, to be able to check the PDF designs and provide a compliance report, you know, is really groundbreaking. And this is the City of Vancouver, who's now gone live with our eCheck technology. It was actually the City of Vancouver that brought us to North America in the first place, and really led the way with this technology. So if you look here, we're able to basically go into, let's say, floor area, and it's all being checked automatically, but you can see this is just a normal PDF design. And we can dive in, we can exclude out individual components, like you may get the deck excluded, you know, your surface parking might get excluded to a certain point, and then it's included. But basically, and here you can see, I think the rule was, you know, 25% of the side area. So it's basically automatically checking that. So you can see it doing all this. Then we go to other areas, say building height, and building height's really an interesting one to talk about. Because when we start talking about building height, so if you look at how this stuff is calculated in say the city of Vancouver, you can see the way they calculate the base level of where to measure the height from. So they pick they pick 4 points or 4 corners of the site. They get the base elevation, and then it's an interpolation as to where the building is to determine what the ground level is in its natural form would be. So this becomes like an individual line here. So if you look here, so that's it there. And then, if I go into any of the elevations, it will then show you. And so basically what we're doing here is that every time the submission comes in with this calculation, the city's getting this format so they know exactly how it's calculated, and then it comes in consistently. But I guarantee the submissions coming through now, they basically don't come through with this algorithm and set out on it. So basically, you have to do the work, or they've got to do the work on their end to figure out how they got to that calculation. Whereas this is basically showing just consistency. And, we can look at other things here like this is a laneway house, but you start to look at the location. So it's actually showing that it's compliant straight away, right? Whereas this particular setback is non-compliant. It should be 0.9, not 0.6. The same with this particular one. It's non-compliant. So the applicant would know to fix that up before they submit. So, and then, other things here like required spaces. So, habitable rooms. It's checking out all this particular detail very quickly and easily. And as I said, this is being built for the city of Vancouver and for their laneway homes. And it's basically an automatic check. And the nice thing about this also is that you get all these ticks and crosses, but it results in what we call a data stream, so that every submission is now digitized and you extract out all this data in the same format every time. So basically you can access it by API, and as the city's now getting these submissions all digitized, they can start to detect trends in what is passing and what is failing. And this becomes really powerful to the city as it's seeing like what clauses, like for instance, are failing at first submission, or what needs more education, or what might need revising. And this starts to give the data to work through all that. So if you look there, here it is here. You start to see all this particular data. And a picture tells a story. And we've already done a lot of this with the city of Vancouver when we were implementing, like realizing how much duplications there were with zoning bylaw, how often certain rules, they were just actually there was always a variance. So why not change the rule or look at why that's happening? Because all as it was doing was slowing down the process when it was just overridden all the time. So, and again, this is a PDF report that the applicant receives, and the report for PDF or the whole sort of checking process takes a day, because we do have to use our technology to mark up the AI on the drawing. But then you can see the report that's coming through here, the ticks and the crosses, and generally the applicant will go straight to the crosses. But it's also interesting when you do look at what is ticked and seeing, is there more to work with than what you thought when you start to look at it mathematically. And also those areas where that are subjective, we're also guiding that they need to be dealt with, separately, because they're not a calculation, they're a discussion as such. But yeah, you can link back into the rules straight here. And again, exactly what I showed you before, but the applicant gets the report, they look at the report, and then they're able to fix up what they've submitted and then submit nicely. Now, this technology also integrates with any permit workflow automation software. So whatever software the city's using, we've partnered with many already, whether it be Posse or, Amanda or Clarity or whatever it may be. We form part of the workflow. We come in before they submit. So for instance, the applicant may go to submit at the point of on the permit workflow technology that they're using, and then they would be requested to do an e-check report and bumped back into the city platform, which is the Archistar platform, to then look at the particular property, submit a pre-check report, check for compliance, fix it up, maybe do one more after they've done the first one to see how they've checked things up, and then submit back through the permit workflow automation software. So there's a whole nice workflow there. But there is two aspects of it. There is the platform, which is basically, helping constituents to understand planning rules, understand permitted uses, understand what's possible and what's not. And then there is the aspect of being able to do the e-check permit assessment reports. Now, just before I finish up, and I know I've gone a little bit over because there's so much to tell you guys, but we've also started working with the building code, and I really wanted to tell you about this. This is actually the city of Burlington actually decided to do a particular pilot with us to test out the technology in relation to the building code. And I'll just bring that up. And what we did was we checked certain parts of the code, and it's really cool what we've been able to achieve here. And just while this is loading up, we've also just started a pilot with the International Code Council with 10 cities in the US to test out and prove out the technology in relation to the International Building Code, which is very exciting. So not only zoning bylaw, but also obviously the building code. And the wonderful thing about the building code is no matter what size city you are, the rules are the same in respect to the state or the province you're at. But if I just quickly show you this, you can see here in the building code that we've started. So this is a really interesting one here. It's a little bit, but you can start to see, ceiling heights, and there is a little bit of a lag here, guys. So you can see here, checking the ceilings in bulk. You look here at, the bedroom or bedroom space with ceiling height. Then we go here into things like, dining rooms, and this is really, and the living spaces. On the plans, it doesn't separate dining and kitchen. But our technology is able, because it's already loaded into the engine, we're able to actually break down what's permitted within the dining, kitchen, and living areas. So you could have like multiple living, dining, and kitchen combined, and the individual component of that has to be a minimum area and a minimum size. So then you start to look at that. And the interesting thing here is that they don't mark it up on the plans, as I said. So on the plans, it's just one space. And we're able to do that automatically here using eCheck as an example. And yeah, just a couple of other little things like hallways. So automatically checking the hallway widths, or the or looking at doorway sizes. So you can see that there. Again, we can basically check anything that has any type of geometry in it, which is really cool. And finally, even things like stairways. And this is, we also did this when we did the pilot. And when you look at, the stairways, you're looking at, what are the minimum dimensions of the individual stairs, or what's the height, between the staircases, which is here. You can see that. So it's automatically checking everything at once, even the individual, height over the stairs. See that. So it's really amazing what we can do here. So, and again, this is building code, and we've only just started working on the building code, but there's a lot of mathematics involved in the building code, and so much time is spent checking things that we can easily check using our technology by applying our eCheck technology to the building code. So look, that's a lot of information for you, and but I really wanted to give you a thorough look at what we're doing. And yeah, if anyone's got any questions, more than happy to answer them.
David, thank you so much for joining us here. Super, super interesting. I guess the one question I would have for you is what's the best way for people to get a hold of you if we're interested in more, more from Archistar, want to learn more about these products and these services?
So yeah, well, it's easy to contact me. So I will put more than happy to put my contact details up, or I could give you my contact details, but my email is david@Archistar.ai, and more than happy to hear from anybody and to provide individual demos to anybody that would like to find out more about the technology. I should say that we are working with a lot of cities now. The city of Vancouver, Burnaby in BC, Surrey in BC, Mississauga, Burlington, a lot of cities in Ontario, Winnipeg, Austin is about to go live. We're about to go into implementation mode on our technology. Again, we're on the building code pilot at the moment. There are a lot of cities involved. There's 10 of them, the likes of Tampa, LA County, Los Angeles, Seattle, North Las Vegas. Austin is also in that pilot. I think the city of Kansas. So yeah, there's 10 cities all up that are working to test out the technology in relation to the building code, which we will then be presenting at the ICC National Conference later on in a couple of months' time. But when it comes to zoning bylaw, well, that's about working with individual cities and also the platform, because each city owns its own zoning bylaw. Yeah, so
Yeah, one question on that, David, and maybe we can have this be our final question here. And before the question, just want to again thank Archistar for their time in sponsoring this, and David for your time and the jet lag from Australia to Texas too, and still joining us here, as well as to ClerkMinutes and Megan for her time and talk about that really cool platform. But as we wrap up here, I'm curious about this. This is a really great tool. What are some of the things that if I'm a city who is interested in Archistar, what are the things that we need to put in place first is there anything in terms of like cleaning up the data or looking at the code that makes the process easier when we're layering AI on top of these types of solutions?
Well, I think one of the great things is that we do a lot of the heavy lifting for cities, and that's really so important. So when we start working with cities, we normally just start with what you call a 3-month pilot or a 3-month experiment. So that's a really good way to start working with the city, and we start testing out our technology in relation to a city's designs for a particular building type and zoning bylaw for that particular building type. And we build out e-check and 3 reports, and we start working with the city in that process. And we've done it in such a way that, look, it doesn't really matter how advanced the city is. It's more about them having the capacity and appetite to want to explore it more. Now, bear in mind, there's 2 parts of this. There's not just e-check, but there's also the platform part of it as well, which cities are just loving because, it's solving other problems. Because the platform goes to another level because it's actually been built in such a way that it helps constituents understand the development potential of their own properties, understand restrictions on their site, and even people that are looking to invest into a particular city. They can go on a block of land and start to understand what you can and can't do with that block of land, which then promotes investment. And then the next level is, yes, if a city wants to, they can then look to explore another module, which is then made available at a certain cost to developers and property professionals, where they get access to other data, like third-party data and our parametric design generators and feasibility tools, which really then, again, is another means of helping to increase housing supply by encouraging, developers and other people to really look at particular city and opportunities in that city in an easy way.
Yeah, excellent points. And it's really cool that, like you said, Archistar does a lot of the work for the city, so there's really no barrier to getting started and having that conversation right away. So
that's my details I just put up. So,
perfect.
Yep.
Perfect.
So if anyone wants to contact me, feel free to. You can grab me on email. That is my number when I'm in the United States. I'm here for another 3 weeks. I only just arrived last night, but certainly very easy to contact me and members of my team. And it's really exciting, the work we're doing. And anyone that's on the call and really interested in exploring it more, more than happy to have a chat and show you in more detail and go from there. But thank you for having me today, and I really hope you've enjoyed what we've presented.
Well, thank you, David. This is absolutely incredible. Excited to have more, hopefully, people reach out to you and continue the conversation. Really cool stuff here. And just thank you all again for spending this afternoon with us. Thank you for your flexibility on this as well too. And for those of you who are watching this after the live recording, watching on YouTube or LinkedIn, thank you for joining us as well here on your time and taking an hour out of your day to have this conversation. For the next time, we're looking forward to seeing you all back on our regular scheduled time, which is Monday, September 2nd at 11 a.m. Phoenix time. So until then, be well and look forward to seeing you then.